We're watching The Worst Nutrition Mistakes by Jeff Nippard. This video is a year old, but just what you know.
In this video, I'll be sharing some of the worst nutrition mistakes pretty much every lifter makes at some point, myself included. In fact, I really wish I knew about these things when I started lifting over 10 years ago, because if I had just known them from the start, I would have made better gains without so many unnecessary challenges. All right, the first...
Yeah, I think everyone can really relate to that. I definitely would have a lot of things to say to my younger self about my diet. A lot, probably more than this video.
First mistake most people make is thinking that you can force feed muscle growth. You can't. I think a lot of people see pro bodybuilders eating 5,000 plus calorie diets and assume that if they also want to get big, they need to also eat big. There may be a kernel of truth to this for some lifters, but the reality is that bodybuilding anecdotes are often unreliable. That's because pro bodybuilders have world-class genetics, have already been training for a decade or more, and are almost always taking large doses of anabolic steroids. So it's hard to know if the results are coming from the fact that they're eating big to get big, or some combination of those other factors. Now,
I mean, if you're training and you're growing, which this is for every new lifter, most people that go into the gym nowadays are actually really young, like they're still growing in height, which is definitely something that's very hard to do. If you're gonna be growing in height, going to school, climbing up stairs all day and shit like that, and you're really gonna have to eat a lot, and it really is a problem actually, because people really act like you have to eat too little nowadays. It's actually a really healthy thing to have a big appetite. If you see an animal that is eating a lot, it eats a lot of food, it's actually a healthy thing. It's a good appetite. The problem comes when the animal stops eating. That's when you know it's time for them to get fucking euthanized or something, because they just get sick. That's how it is. When you lose your appetite, that's when things get bad. If anything, it's actually a good thing.
Now, the reason I say that you can't force feed muscle growth is that studies consistently show that when you overfeed someone with a large caloric surplus, they gain disproportionately more fat than they do muscle. And this
Yeah, but look at what that guy's eating. He's eating a fucking chocolate. Yeah, no fucking shit then. If someone eats, people who eat too much calories gain too much fat, it's because to eat too much calories, you have to eat shit like this. But if that was a steak and you ate more steak, even if you force-fed steak, or even milk actually, just basically anything that's actually of micronutrient quality, it's like high, it's like an actual natural food, then literally you might gain a lot of fat, but you will gain strength and muscle like nothing before, especially with milk. Literally, I drank 3 liters of milk a day and my strength fucking skyrocketed.
This is true even if findings were corroborated by a later 2018 study, which has led experts in the field to describe nutrition as having a permissive role in muscle building. In other words, your diet permits muscle growth to occur. It doesn't cause muscle growth to occur. You can't force feed muscle growth. Training is what tells
dude, if you eat grains your whole life and your hormones are fucked up, you're shorter than most people. Most people are like this. You can probably relate to this. Your puberty might have been a bit later on than other people. It happens more with how little less nutrients you have. Obviously, the pronunciation is more pronounced. The effects are more pronounced. But in the end, it's the same. If you start eating more meat, more eggs, more milk, less bread, less rice, and shit like that, you're gonna make muscle, even if you don't go to the gym. So I really disagree about the permissive role, really.
For that video. Okay, the second mistake most people make is not realizing that most supplements are overrated. Now, there are a few supplements that actually do work.
Every supplement is overrated unless the supplement is an actual food.
Creatine, caffeine, and protein powder.
Creatine, as in the thing found in red meat that if you eat the normal, natural amount of red meat, you get enough of and it works completely fine, which means you don't have to put it into a weird powder and take it every day, hating it. Yeah, it's found in red meat, man. And caffeine, why the fuck would that work? That is one of the worst things you can actually drink, because it adrenalizes you and then you have a crash. Everyone knows the fucking caffeine crash, and the reason why is because you're basically borrowing energy. If you take a shortcut in anything in life, especially a shortcut that gets rid of like a natural thing, like energy, like natural energy, it's gonna come back to bite you. And how is the fuck is protein a supplement, man? Just eat steak, egg, milk. Actually, almost every good food has protein in it. I've never thought about protein like at all in terms of like grams and shit like that. Just eat however much meat tastes good, and that's how you know you get enough protein. If by the end of the day you eat a steak or chicken breast or something, it just doesn't taste good, you don't feel like eating it, that's your senses telling you it doesn't need any more protein, and so you don't need to take this.
Are at the top of my short list when it comes to building muscle. However, even with these 3 most science-based supplements, I think a lot of people, including people in the science-based lifting community, still overestimate how much muscle people will actually gain from taking them. For example, creatine is one of the most highly researched and most efficacious supplements supplements on the market. This is true, and we hear it so much that I think it leads a lot of new lifters to think they're going to notice a massive steroid-like boost from it. In reality, most studies show that taking creatine should result in a roughly 2 to 3 pound increase in lean mass. For example, this 8-week training study found that a group taking creatine gained 1.1 kilograms, or 2.2 pounds, more lean mass than a group taking placebo. Similarly, this systematic review, which pulled together 22 studies on older subjects.
Yeah, and if they ate meat, red meat, which has creatine, it would have the same effect, obviously. In fact, even better effect, because you're just getting closer to what you were naturally supposed to have. You were naturally supposed to have more creatine. So of course you have an easier time building it. And yet these kind of people will say, no, don't eat too much red meat because, nature has it wrong. For you to be optimal, you need to take the creatine supplement made by this company that we didn't have access to not even 100 years ago. But back then, everyone was messed up. No one could build muscle properly. Now we can.
Found that creatine increased lean mass by 1.4 kilos, or just about 3 pounds, more than placebo. And those studies ranged from 7 weeks to a full year length. Again, it isn't that creatine doesn't work. It clearly does. And 2 to 3 pounds of lean mass is still significant. It's a solid increase, and given the relatively cheap price point of simple creatine monohydrate, it's definitely worth taking, in my opinion. However, compared to a bodybuilding steroid cycle, which can add upwards of 10 to 20 pounds of lean mass in just a month or two, it's also worth tempering your expectations. Caffeine is another supplement that I personally use and that has a lot of scientific research supporting its efficacy for strength, power, and muscular endurance. Caffeine can definitely give you a mental boost before training, and anecdotally, I do find it leads to better workouts. However, the research as a whole isn't particularly exciting when it comes to muscle growth specifically. Again, it isn't that caffeine doesn't work, it does. It's just important to temper your expectations. If pre-workout caffeine is the only thing that's able to get you up off the couch and through the gym doors, then it could be having a huge behavioral impact on your gains.
Yeah, and that's what will happen eventually the more and more caffeine you take. Just like any other drug, your body kind of adapts to the thing, and you need more and more because your body is building itself centered around this drug. And so now you live with the drug. You can't just get completely off it. You'll have withdrawal, which will be super low energy and stuff. And this is basically the same as any other drug.
But if you're going to be training anyway, the muscle gains you'll see specifically as a result of caffeine supplementation is nothing astronomical. Lastly, protein powder is a supplement I often recommend that has a large amount of scientific literature supporting its use for muscle growth. Protein powders are very convenient and can make hitting your daily protein targets easier.
You know what else is convenient? Eating raw meat, raw eggs, raw milk, everything that's raw. It's just, if it comes from a healthy place and a healthy source, and you're aware that there is going to be like a slight risk because it's raw, it is safe to eat. And especially if you're a little bit queasy about like raw meat and stuff, like that's something I got into like more recently, and it's a bigger jump. Like I get that. Something like raw milk is like even quite well known nowadays that it's like fine, and even just regular milk in a carton is still easy to drink. In fact, protein powder is whey protein. It comes from milk. You're just getting rid of everything else from the milk. You should just drink milk out of a carton. I don't get the difference. Yeah, it has more calories or something.
However, if you're able to hit your daily protein target with high protein foods alone, adding extra protein powder won't provide any extra gains. So, as I see it, protein powder simply provides a very convenient option for getting in some high quality protein, but it's not magic.
Yeah, everything you eat should be convenient anyways, but yeah, even then, just drink the fucking milk. It doesn't matter.
Just another food option. And again, I personally take all 3 of these supplements, and I recommend them to any serious lifter who can budget them. But as you go further and further down the list, the supplements get less and less promising. The third mistake most people make is thinking you need a super high protein diet to build muscle. You don't. This is actually something I've updated my stance on over the last few years. I used to recommend protein intakes a bit higher than I do now, but I've updated that based on new research. A lot of people seem to think that if you...
That is the complete sign of a weak man, kind of, because masculinity is sort of knowing it's like a rock. You know what I mean? Nothing should really be able to change it. Now, that doesn't mean like stay stuck in your own ways, but it means like if you're doing something and it's working well, and you get a new study that comes out that says the opposite, and you give it all up that was working well because this study said so, and the study is made by some random people in the government that want you to spend more time in the gym or whatever. That's kind of what it seems like, I'm not gonna lie. Because there is definitely like a very big agenda going on where they want people to be in the gym doing like 30 sets a week. I'm not even joking. That's literally what all the studies say, and it's fucking like bullshit, all of it anyways. And so like, why? Like, some things you just know, like you just know, okay? For example, there's a lot of studies that show the hydration effects of water, and this is completely unrelated, but I was actually arguing with like my dad about it. Literally, water isn't as hydrating as raw milk. you can't change my mind. He was telling me like, oh no, but the doctor said and the studies and this and that. It's like, bro, you literally can't change my mind because I fucking like tested it myself. Raw milk is at least 4 times as hydrating as water. At least in my body. That's the only body I've tested it on, since it's the only one I have. But that's like, I know it. Like, no one can tell me anything. You can't comment, oh wait, water hydrates you more than raw milk. Like, I've done it. Like, it literally works that way. So no study can come out and change that fact, because it's a fact, because I've done it and I know it. You know what I mean?
You just load up on protein, your body will have to build more muscle. After all, muscle is made up of protein, so the more protein you eat, the more muscle you'll build. It makes intuitive.
And again, with the fucking protein. No. Muscle is made out of muscle. Muscle is muscle, okay? The best food for muscle is muscle, as in a steak. The muscle of an animal, which is a steak, on your plate will help you make the muscle on your body the best, because everything that you need to make the muscle on your body has to be found in the fucking muscle in the steak. It just has to be. How can your body make something which isn't found in the exact same thing, but from like a slightly different animal? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Nature is the same. It works the same way.
Intuitive sense, but in reality, research shows that the effect of protein on muscle growth is magnitudes smaller than the effect of training. Eating protein gives these short-lived blips in muscle protein synthesis, while training causes this long and prolonged elevation, the elevation that's ultimately driving new growth. Now, according to the latest research, the optimal protein target for building muscle in a caloric surplus is 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, or 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo. Practically speaking, I put most people in the middle, and going above that range won't cause more gains. If you're in a caloric deficit for fat loss, shifting protein...
What is that, man? Do you really think that can turn into muscle? Or bone mass? Or anything? What do you think your body's gonna do with that? Can it even be turned into energy? Okay, it has a glucose or something, so sugar, like blood glucose. You know, like it can turn into sugar, like energy. That's about it. But then, what about when you already have all the energy you need, which this won't even give you? You're just gonna store it as fat. That's the only thing. That's all I see here. It's just turns into fat. It doesn't help your hormones or anything in any way. And what you just heard was my Fortnite, by the way.
Slightly higher, to 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound, is smart to prevent muscle loss, or even allow muscle gain in some instances. Personally, I'm still cutting at the moment, and I eat 150 grams of protein per day at 165 pounds body weight. So that's about 0.9 grams of protein per pound of body weight for me. I just say this to show that even sitting toward the lower end of these ranges is still perfectly fine, and I usually only suggest going to the upper end if someone is really shredded and at a particularly high risk of muscle loss.
And again, this will just be your natural senses. Like, you will literally just taste protein to taste better. It will just taste better when you want to be more around here, and it will taste less good when your body wants to be more around here, which your body's always going to try to be completely 100% optimal. Your body's not going to try to backstab you in any way. So obviously this is just not even needed. And also, there's different sources of protein that are better than others. For example, eggs are better than oat protein or fucking soy protein or vegetable protein, and the red meat is probably better than eggs because of the creatine and stuff.
Of course, it's also important to realize that even if you eat below these ideal ranges, you can still build muscle. It just may not happen as quickly. A recent systematic review from Morton and colleagues found that people tend to build more and more muscle as they increase protein, but only up to 0.7 grams per pound. That's where the trend hit.
Bro, look at these. It means nothing, bro. Look at this guy all the way over here, all the way down here, dude. Look at this guy all the way up here, and yeah, you can kind of see the line going this way. Look, these two guys are at the same thing, but one's lower than the other. Like, just look how little dots are. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, am I the only one that just doesn't see any value, really, in studies and stuff? Like, everyone pays so much, like, attention to this, and he has, like, the animations going up and everything. But honestly, this just looks, like, so, like, variable. Like, maybe this guy slept a little more than this guy, and this guy like went out to the pub on Friday, and this guy is like a nerd or some shit, and this guy like watches anime all day. Like, it's so irrelevant.
Break point. Going up from there doesn't seem to do much of anything extra. But that doesn't mean no gains occur if you go below 0.7 grams per pound. They do. If you were to eat just 0.5 grams per pound, you'd still build muscle.
Yeah, and these guys are probably forcing themselves to eat too little, and these guys are eating how much they want.
Diet, you can still build muscle. It'll just take a bit longer. And it may also be reassuring to know that the optimal level of protein intake is still quite a bit lower than what most of the bodybuilding magazines say. The fourth mistake a lot of people make is misunderstanding meal frequency. Many people don't realize that the number of meals you should eat per day for fat loss is really up to you. Now, I'm tempted to say that the number of meals you eat per day doesn't matter, but that isn't quite true. For some people, eating 1 or 2 large meals per day within a time-restricted feeding window will be much more effective at helping them reduce their total daily caloric intake and
Yeah, because you're fasting all this time, and this is all time that your body could be digesting food, and so then when you eat 2 meals super quickly in like a shorter space, like this is basically intermittent fasting, then of course your body is not going to have enough space in the stomach to eat as much as you actually want. That is still calorie restriction. Just because you're full at the end of the day or whatever, doesn't mean you're having calorie restricted. You've still basically just forced yourself to eat less than you actually want to, because otherwise you would have eaten in these times that you actually wanted to eat, but you forced yourself not to. If this looks normal for you, like this is how much your body wants to eat, and during these fasting periods you're actually full and you don't like the taste of food, like you don't find the food appetizing, then don't eat it. It's fine. Your body is telling you it's fine then. But if during these times you're really hungry and you want to eat, but you're like, no, my fasting window, then just eat, bro.
lose more fat as a result. Still, for other people, restricting their eating window can make the diet feel more difficult. They might find that their energy is lower throughout the day and their hunger is less manageable.
Yeah, obviously.
So for them, a higher frequency grazing meal pattern where they eat 4, 5, or 6.
Okay, but this doesn't happen eating naturally either. Like, definitely not 5 meals. Like, yeah, okay, I can imagine 1 big meal, then a little small, little, like, raw milk, like, hydration with some fruit meal. Like, yeah, that works for sure. But if this is, like, literally, like, steak, obviously this guy doesn't eat steak based. He probably eats, like, oats and fucking rice and bread, and then... and then an apple with tuna or some shit. Like, definitely, something like that. Yeah, of course you're gonna have to eat fucking 5 meals a day.
Smaller meals spaced throughout the day would most
The point is, you just eat how much you want.
likely be more effective.
Whenever you want.
Of course, the good news is that we have a ton of flexibility to try both. That's because the scientific literature shows that when we equate caloric intake and protein intake, one approach isn't significantly better than another. This is why I think it's very important that people not grind through.
Yeah, what is the broccoli there for exactly? Filling up your body with air, basically. Actually, it's probably worse than air. I'd say it's a net neutral, maybe slightly net negative on your health. Definitely just eat nothing instead of the broccoli at that point. What's the point?
Through eating 6 to 8 meals a day, just because it's supposed to speed up your metabolism, doesn't, and why it's also important that people not struggle sticking to intermittent fasting just because it's supposed to be better at burning belly fat. It isn't. You just need to find a meal pattern that'll help you follow through on the diet better. Now,
by the way, people are gonna think that I'm hating on people when I make videos. Some people say like, oh, you're a fucking idiot, why are you like claiming this is bad, it doesn't work for them or whatever, if it works for them. I'm actually like on his side, on his body's side, because for example, the broccoli, he doesn't fucking like broccoli. No human actually likes broccoli. If you ate it literally with no seasoning or anything, because that's what people eat broccoli with, they drown it in stuff so that they can mask the taste of it. It doesn't matter what you say. I know that you hate broccoli. It's just, it has to be that way because that's just the way it is for every single human. Just like every cow loves eating grass. It's just the same for all of us. And so his body knows this as well. If anything, he's just going against his own body. It's just not necessary.
It's worth mentioning that muscle growth does seem to be slightly impacted by the number of meals you eat per day, but also probably not to the extent that most people think. A recent study from 2021 found that there was no...
And if some motherfucker's gonna type, actually, I like broccoli a lot. Yeah, okay. How about you post a video of you eating 1 kilogram of broccoli with nothing else on top of it, just broccoli, since that's what you love so much, and you eat 1 kilogram of it without struggling in your face, just, oh, I love it, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's great. Impossible. I've never seen that before, ever. And honestly, I don't even want to see that. That would be quite fucking disgusting. You'd probably have to... You might actually have some sort of trauma or something to do that. I'm not even
no
joking.
significant difference in muscle gained between a group eating 3 meals a day versus 6 meals a day. So you can eat anywhere from...
I mean, I guess if you like grow up with it, I guess it could be a little different.
Expect to see
just,
very similar
oh man,
muscle
it's
growth.
impossible.
However, another study from the previous year, in 2020, found that eating 3 meals a day did trend toward more muscle growth than only eating 2 meals a day, with a fairly large effect size, even though it didn't reach statistical significance. So, as of now, I think that for fat loss, 1 to 6 meals per day is perfectly fine, but But for muscle growth, 3 to 6 meals is probably slightly more optimal than just 1 to 2 meals. Still, I should point out that in the 2020 study, the 2-meal group did of course still make gains, and the difference between 2 meals and 3 meals wasn't enormous. Now, before we go, I want to mention one last thing that I really wish I knew about when I first started learning about nutrition, which is the MacroFactor diet app.
Macro, it's in the name. That's all these guys kind of care about, the bodybuilding guys, just macros, because everything has fucking macros. If you think macros are the only thing that matter, basically it just means eating enough protein. Then you can eat whatever. You can eat protein ice cream, you can eat protein pizza, you can eat a chicken breast, and then after you hit your protein, you can eat a bunch of pizza, ice cream, chocolate, snacks, and just make sure you eat little enough of that you're still in your calories. And obviously that's not how it fucking works. Your body has hormones and stuff that is important to eat the right food. So,
if you aren't aware, I'm a part owner of MacroFactor.
And also the way the food is assimilated and used in the body to grow, to use energy and stuff like that, which is going to give you a better workout and better hormones and everything. It's completely different. So, but yeah. If I had to give something that I would tell my younger self, it would probably be to start eating, probably to get a job and start getting some money so that I can actually start buying high quality food. Because growing up with your parents, not buying you like in good enough like farm quality pasture raised meat, grass fed meat, and really good eggs and raw milk, and good enough that you can even eat it raw, because I feel really good eating it raw. That's a whole different discussion really, but I just do. And obviously they have to be really, really high quality to eat them raw. Then yeah, I would probably just tell myself to just get a job as quick as possible so I can actually afford that, because it really helps. Yeah, that's it. See you.